I found out later on just how
Children
devastating
decided it was time for mother and father.
So we all know Andrew, State Representative Andrew McLean, and he's been here very many times before, and he's going to talk to us, show us this morning, with a little technical glitch, but he's going to show us his trip to Switzerland this past summer, where he was going to take a law class, because now you're in law school, and he took a class that was taught partially by retired Supreme Court Justice Kennedy.
That's great.
So he's going to tell us about the beautiful things he saw and maybe a little about what it's like to learn law from a Supreme Court justice and entertain us and take it away.
Yeah, sure. I don't have an agenda, but I brought lots of pictures and I brought some stories, and I hope you guys have questions too, because I like the interaction. I like questions. So I couldn't get my computer to work, but when it comes to technology, there's usually a way. So I usually post all my travel pictures on Facebook, and so here they are. They're all up on Facebook, so that works out pretty well. I hope you guys can see them okay. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about the course that I took and this summer, and we ended up doing a little bit of traveling while we were there too, because while you're in Europe, you might as well go explore, right? So, if you guys have experiences from some of these places, I'm sure many of you have visited some of these places, feel free to share. So I am in the middle of my second year of law school, and 1.5 years through, I have 1.5 more years, so 3 more semesters to go. Last summer, they always recommend that you do something more fun than work, right? In your first summer of law school. So I said, I'm gonna have a lot of fun this summer. So I was looking at opportunities to go and do some traveling, but also some learning at the same time. And there are a lot of opportunities to study law across the world, particularly in Europe. So I was going through some of these programs at different law schools that they offer, and I came across this one from the University of the Pacific. It's out of Sacramento. It's called McGeorge Law School, and never heard of them before. So I'm scrolling through looking through the program and the agenda, and that's going to go off on me, isn't it? Okay, that should be better. Okay, there we go. So I was going through, and then all of a sudden it said that the courses are taught by Anthony Kennedy, Justice Anthony Kennedy of the United States Supreme Court. And I said, no, that was probably 15 years ago, like one-off deal, 1 year. And so I emailed and I inquired. I said, tell me more about this. Was this like 15 years ago and you're just still bragging about this, or what? And they said, no. Every single year, he goes over to Salzburg, Austria, and teaches a class on freedom of speech. And lo and behold, it was really true. I Googled it, looked at the pictures, read reviews, and wow, he's been there every year since 1978. So I signed up for the course. I was very excited. They offer 3 courses, one of which is taught by Anthony Kennedy. And so I actually brought my books from the class. I always have to prove it to people, by pictures or by book. And I just want to show you the book for the class. It says Justice Anthony Kennedy right here. So, okay, now you believe me? Okay, I'll even show you a picture. Okay. And so I keep all these little mementos, and I'll just share a bunch of stories with you. But anyway, I signed up for the class, got over there. I flew into Zurich, and a couple days before the class started, and I took a train over to Salzburg, which is about a 6-hour train trip to Salzburg. That is not from my travels. That is from the State House. So let's go the other way. They are. They're definitely part of my adventures, that's for sure. And so I'm just going to show you some pictures. If you get bored, tell me to fast forward through this. But this is the train station in Zurich, and after not having slept, and so I took the train. Have any of you ever traveled from Zurich to Salzburg on the train? Peter, I figured you had. Yeah. It's just a remarkable trip. It's just. I hope you all can see these pictures. I took a video. I think it's on here. Yeah, it was really quite amazing. And it's just, lakes, and then the mountains go right up. And of course, the videos are not going to show up here, are they? But Arlsberg Pass, I think it's what it's called. This is, you go really high into the mountains and you go right through it. You can't quite see it, but it's, there's a big valley here, and it's just, you think of Sound of Music, right? I mean, literally, right? Salzburg is where it was filmed, and in and around Salzburg. But it's so quaint and so relaxing. This is a better picture. Just little houses, and this is making my way to the Austrian border. Just some border towns, and out the mountains, and I wish the videos were on here because the videos came out well. So I've arrived in Salzburg. I'm here. Have any of you ever been to Salzburg? Peter, you have? Anyone else? It's one of the most charming little cities in the world. It's quite remarkable. So Salzburg is a very old city. This is the Salzach River. And so Salzburg was essentially founded because of the old salt mines that are up in the mountains pretty close by, so you can actually go into the salt mines and stuff. So it was founded based on that kind of industry. And the old city, this is the old city, and of course it's a very old city, so this naturally is a castle, right? This is the castle up here, which is quite an amazing structure itself. It's sat upon this little hill, little tiny mountain. And if you watch The Sound of Music, you'll recognize many of these places. So I arrived a day before the class started just to make sure I got there on time. Whoops, wrong way. And hung around, and here's let's see if this is going to work, the 360 picture. I went up and, of course, had to have a beer when I got there, some good Austrian beer, and up on a hill. And, of course, no, the 360 is not going to work right now. But anyway, there's a big cathedral, and this was the next day, my first full day there. The sun was shining. It was really just quite brilliant. There are several different bridges that you can walk over and see. And so this is a different view from the other side. Very cute little streets, just awesome. And this is the inside of the Salzburg Cathedral, and I really want to show you. Maybe I'll do it at the end, that way I don't lose my spot. But that's the castle from right down below, and you can take the funicular up, which is really cool.
What is the name of the castle?
Peter, do you remember the name of the castle? Why can't I recall the name?
No.
No,
I don't.
It's called the Fortress. It's actually called the Fortress. I can't remember. I feel like I've lost it. And so, but I'll get that for you. So this is the University of Salzburg, and I don't know if any of you read. This is German, I think. German, yeah. University of Salzburg, and you can kind of make out judicial, right? So this is the faculty law building. And this is where we had all of our classes. And it's literally right in the center of the city. And so,
how many in the class?
What was that?
How many in the class?
Yeah, so there were 26 students in the class, and I was the only person who was not from that particular school. So I was a little bit of a novelty, right? Yeah. Oh God, there's me. And so this is the cathedral, and back here, and I want to show you. I love European cathedrals. They are just amazing, amazing structures, and the sound, the acoustics in them, it just gives you chills for hours. And so I would go every Sunday to mass, and I just go for the music because it's so uplifting and moving, and the choirs and stuff. So I'll show you a few. This is Mirabelle Gardens. That's food. Yeah. So you all recognize this probably from The Sound of Music. This is where the kids were playing, and that's the fortress in the distance. And you also notice I do take pictures of food because I do love food. Anyone know what this is? Tiramisu. Yeah, it was really good. So this is Salzburg at night. And yeah, more food. Yeah. Yeah. I know. Someone once told me when they go out to eat, they said, "My phone eats first," as in they take a picture of their food first, right? Yeah.
The
So
Europeans do that too? I thought that was just an ugly American.
No, Europeans like food just as much as we do. So here is the first night. We had an opening dinner. I don't know if you can all see Justice Kennedy right here. And we had an opening dinner. We weren't expecting him to be there, but he was there. And he literally had just finished up, I'm not sure if you all follow the Supreme Court and how it works, but they had literally just finished up their session about 5 days ago, right? Issued their final opinions for the summer. And here he was with the 26 of us. His wife was there. His 2 grandkids were there. They were auditing the class with us, and so which was kind of cool. So he got up and spoke for 10 minutes about the class and kind of the history of why he's been doing this and how he came to do this. He started back in the 1970s doing this. He wanted kind of a different experience. He wanted to teach. He likes teaching. He likes young people. He wanted a different experience for students. And so he's originally from Sacramento, which is why he's associated with the school in California. And he started in the 70s, and the program kind of grew over time. So every single summer, he goes to Salzburg for a couple weeks and teaches this class. So this particular class that I took with him, Freedom of Expression was one. I took 2 other classes that I won't necessarily talk a lot about, but International Dispute Resolution, which was a focus on dispute resolution across borders, which was really, really interesting. The other one I took was European Union Law for International Business. So as you know, American law is distinct from other countries, right? We have a different system of laws, a different type of laws, different processes. And so when you cross borders, particularly over in Europe or even Asia or Africa, there's a different system. And so if you're a business that's operating in the United States and France and Germany, you need to know all the different types of laws. And so it was a very short course. It was very much an introductory course, but it was still very interesting, both of those. So the Freedom of Expression course was particularly interesting, not just because he was teaching it, but I thought it was really, really relevant given kind of the everything that's going on in the world today, right? There seems to be so much conflict. Democracy itself seems to, there are a lot of people who like to poke holes in our democratic system. And there are a lot of authoritarian leaders who are trying to take advantage of that across the world. And so the Freedom of Expression course was particularly relevant. What it was a comparative course. It compared freedom of speech, freedom of expression in the United States as it exists in our Constitution versus the European system of freedom of speech. And so we have one of the things that I think is quite remarkable at our system is we really take for granted the freedoms that we have in our country. We don't necessarily think twice about it. And in most other countries, even in Europe, Europeans don't have the extent of freedom that we do in terms of freedom of speech, freedom of expression. We tolerate a lot when it comes to what people can say, what people can feel, what people can think. We tolerate a lot. In Europe, they tolerate a lot, but certainly not to the extent that we do. So we were told to grab 2 copies, to grab these 2 books. This is the United States Constitution, and this is the European Convention on Human Rights. And it's basically, I won't go into a whole diatribe about how the European Union was formed, but essentially, after World War II, in an attempt to break down barriers and break down silos and create a more uniform system of governance in Europe to avoid another World War II, the European Union was created. And so what it does is it creates fewer economic barriers. So there's more trade, there's more cohesiveness, there's more communication and travel across borders. And so after the European Union was created, they had to draft some rules and some laws to abide by. And this is the European Convention on Human Rights. And so what it essentially does is it outlines the rights and responsibilities that Europeans have. And so we focus primarily on, I forget what it was, whether it was Article 10 under, Article 10, yeah. So Article 10 is kind of equal of our First Amendment, right? Our First Amendment is freedom of speech, right? Amongst other things, freedom of assembly. And Article 10 here is freedom of expression. So we essentially read both of them. We compared lots of cases, because that's what we do in law school. I knew we read a lot, but I had no idea how much we read. This was 2 weeks worth. 2 weeks of cases. And I'm used to reading United States Supreme Court cases, which are fairly readable for the average person. Of course, I'm more used to them because I'm used to our judicial system. But when you start reading European Union, it's called the European Court of Justice, the International Court of Justice. That's the Supreme Court of the European Union. They get a little more technical and a little odd, so it takes a while to digest them and figure out what the heck is going on. And so we had to, read most of these, and we had to come to class. And I'm not sure if you know how law school works, but it's not your typical academic experience. You have to read cases, and then the professors call on you. What was such and such case about, or what was the holding in such and such a case, or what was the plaintiff's 3 principal arguments in their case, right? So you have to figure out and make sure you understand these cases. And what we do is we do a brief of the case when we do homework. So someone told me, who sued whom for what, who won, and why? Right? Yeah. Lots of W's. Yeah. So Justice Kennedy taught this class. And he taught it with another instructor. Her name was Professor Douglas Scott. She is a professor of law at Queen Mary University, something like that, in London. And she was excellent. And she is very well traveled, and so I was fascinated by her, not just because of her accent, but I was fascinated by her. And very, very bright. And so I went up to chat with her, and she's very well traveled. She's spent time in Portland. She's been to Portland and stuff, which is kind of neat. And her husband actually has a home in New Hampshire. Yeah. Which I thought was a kind of a cool connection. Yeah. So small world, and they were both great, and so they co-taught the course, and they challenged each other on some of these things, and on some of the issues. And Justice Kennedy critiqued the European system, and Professor Douglas Scott critiqued the American system. And so that's what law school is for. It's really designed to make you think better. It's designed to make you evaluate situations and facts differently. And it was really quite fascinating. Justice Kennedy himself, my impression was that he's an introvert. I went up to chat with him almost every day, because why wouldn't you? And I had to keep up the conversation with him. But that's not kind of, everyone has their own thing, right? So you have this impression that they're very gregarious and inclusive, and he tended to be kind of quiet. Frankly, he's gotten up in age. He's almost 80 years old. And so he's much older than he was when he was appointed under Reagan. So that was really interesting. Couple other things. I was taking the class right at the time that President Trump nominated Brett Kavanaugh. So it was a particularly interesting time. In fact, yeah, I know. In fact, what was most interesting, the day after Kavanaugh was nominated to the Supreme Court, I was walking into class. Kennedy happened to be walking into class at the same time. So it was me and him just walking into class at the same time. And after stuttering for a moment, I said, so your successor was just nominated last night, your successor. And I said, what do you think? And he didn't offer too much, but he did say, he is a very, very smart man. And don't get me wrong, I'm certainly not endorsing him, but this is what Kennedy was saying. Kennedy said he's a very smart man. He teaches, which he likes. And he kind of left it at that. And again, I had to poke and prod a little bit because he tended to be quiet. But it was kind of interesting just chatting with him about that. I mean, I'll always kind of remember that experience. I actually went to my computer and wrote down the conversation just so I'd remember it, you know. Again, proof, evidence, you know.
That's part of being a lawyer, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. Write everything down. Yes. The other interesting moment I had with him was a couple days later, and when he was appointed under Reagan, he was appointed by a conservative Republican, and he turned out to be a very moderate justice. He was conservative on many issues like labor and economic issues, but he was very progressive on social issues like choice and marriage equality. And so we don't often find justices like that anymore. And so that was particularly interesting to me. So one day I went up to him and I said, Justice Kennedy, do you have a moment? And I said, I want to thank you because I was able to marry my husband Kyle because of your work on the Supreme Court and your vote on the case in 2015 called Obergefell, which legalized marriage equality for gay and lesbian couples in Maine. I'm sorry, in the United States. And I said, you're a different generation than I am. What led you to be an advocate for gay and lesbian American citizens? Because it wasn't just this particular case. Last semester I took constitutional law, and there's a whole line of cases that led to marriage equality in the United States. Back in 1986, Justice Kennedy was one of the justices that overturned the ban on the sodomy laws, right? That you could go to jail just for having consensual sexual relations with another person. In 1994, he was one of the pivotal votes overturning a Colorado state amendment to their constitution that essentially prohibited cities and towns from enacting anti-discrimination ordinances, which was really remarkable in the mid-90s. In 2012, he was one of the swing votes overturning DOMA, which was the Defense of Marriage Act, which was the precursor to marriage equality. So the Defense of Marriage Act was enacted by the federal government in 1996. What that did was it prevented any sort of federal recognition of any sort of same-sex relationship. So all these things led me to ask that question: what led you to be such an advocate for LGBT people on the court? And he said, Andrew, oftentimes we don't see injustice in our own time. It takes another generation to see it. And he said that's what led me to those beliefs. And I said, but you saw injustice in your own time. I said, so what led you to do that? He said, Andrew, it wasn't these aren't easy issues for me. He said, I'm a Catholic, I'm a devout Catholic, but I also believe that we need to recognize when we do see injustice in our own time and correct it as soon as possible. And so it was really remarkable. It was really interesting to see the way that he thought about some of these issues, and he recognized that societies change, people change, the norms and values that we hold sometimes change, and that the Constitution itself is a living and breathing document, right? The Constitution was written in the late 1700s. Lots changed since then. Lots changed. Lots has changed. And so it has to adapt to the time that we're in. And so that was really remarkable for me to have that conversation with him, just to kind of get an insight and something that not many law students get to have. And so I'm very thankful and grateful for that. So we had 2 weeks of that class, and we had an exam, of course. because that's what we do in law school. We take exams, and it was one of the most fascinating experiences that I have had in my time. So, and I, as another, I feel like I need to prove this all to you, but he did sign my copy of the Constitution. He does not have very good handwriting, let me tell you. It says, it took me a moment to read it, to Andrew. I'm not even sure what it says. I think it says, with best wishes. Yeah, Justice Anthony Kennedy. Yeah, so I will keep this for a long, long time. So, he also handed out little things. He handed out this bookmark that he brought for all of us, and we've all heard the phrase, the rule of law, right? That we are a nation that abides by laws, because if we don't have laws, it's just chaos, right? We all need to have predictability in terms of what's expected of us. So he handed out this little bookmark to all of us. It says, the rule of law, the law is superior to the government, and it binds the government and all officials to its precepts. The law must respect and preserve dignity, equality, and human rights of all persons. To these ends, the law must establish and guard the constitutional structures necessary to build a free society which all citizens have a meaningful voice in shaping and enacting the rules that govern them. The law must devise and maintain systems to advise all persons of their rights, and it must empower them to fulfill just expectations and to seek redress of grievances without fear of penalty or retaliation. And so, keeping this as well. So, some really, really neat mementos. Anyone have any questions about the class? Or yeah?
Not really about the class,
Yeah.
but which law would you rather be in? This one or theirs?
That's a really good question. Well, I feel like I could probably talk for days about the different systems. The freedom of expression course was really interesting because I like to think, and I'm okay with people doing things a different way. It doesn't make it right, it doesn't make it wrong. It's just different, right? So one of the cases that we studied, one of the European Union cases that we studied, was a case out of Germany, and it was about I'm trying to recall the facts, but it was about a gentleman who had espoused some anti-Semitic views. And he was actually prosecuted for those views that he held. He actually used some fairly hateful language, but I noticed the look on your face, right? That's not something that we would do in this country, right? We actually allow people to use some pretty awful language and to say some pretty distasteful things, right? But that's what is granted under the First Amendment. They're right? There is a line that can get crossed, right? When it becomes defamatory, or if it becomes offensive to an extent, when it becomes dangerous, when it becomes threatening. There are lines that can get crossed. It is not a universal freedom to say whatever you want. But we do tolerate a lot in this country. The European Union does not. There are limits on what can be said. And what I learned in this class is why. And it's because we're all shaped by our experience. Europe was shaped by their experience in World War II. They do not want to see 6 million people die in gas chambers again. And so their experience, their subtle limitation on what they permit people to say and do, is shaped by their devastating experience in World War II, and frankly World War I as well. And so I often have this reaction, the American system is the best, right? I think it's pretty damn good, but it's not the only system. And so I really respect that their laws and their rules are shaped by their experience. And so it's not right or wrong, it's just different. And it works. It works there.
Would you like to see it work here too, some of them?
I don't know. I have very mixed feelings about it. So one of the American cases that we studied was a case from 2011, and it involved, some of you may have heard about this church from Kansas called the Westboro Baptist Church. They are ugly. That's being kind. They are ugly. And what they do is they actually go and picket funerals veterans, of military folks who have served, who have been killed in Afghanistan or Iraq. And I'll just put it out there, they blame America's tolerance for gay and lesbian people on the deaths. Or they blame the deaths on America's tolerance on for gay and lesbian people. It's really gross and despicable. So in 2011, this group went and picketed a funeral in Illinois. And the father of the soldier who had died sued the Westboro Baptist Church. And the case got up to the United States Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, while the Westboro Baptist Church's actions and what they said are absolutely reprehensible, I mean, just absolutely disgusting, the United States Constitution grants them the ability to do that within means. They didn't break any rules. They got a permit to protest. They stood on the sidewalks. They were yelling, but they were still within their bounds. And so, you know, I have mixed feelings, you know. Do we slowly chip away at that right? They say in the law that, I'm gonna, hold on, I need to remember this phrase. I'm trying to remember the phrase. You fight, gosh, I'm trying to remember it. You fight hate with more speech, right? It's the idea that we don't restrict speech, but that we come out stronger, more and better because we protest back, right? Or we organize against the Westboro Baptist Church, or we organize against a hate group, right? We go and protest back. We don't restrict someone's speech. We actually allow them to say what they want to say, and then we call them out on it. And we organize more people because there are more people who believe in peace and love and kindness and civility than those people who preach hate. And so I tend to be more of the belief that we should tolerate a little bit more, allow people to think what they think, and then call them out on it, right?
But we also need to make sure that people who are getting harassed.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where the line gets drawn.
Until they get terribly hurt or dead, supposedly, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
That's not right.
It's not, and I agree with you. There are limits to, there are limits to speech. So there are 6 different kind of areas in which speech can be limited. One is if someone is being threatening or harassing. That is crossing a line because it's actually physically or emotionally impacting the other person. And so
they only put a boundary on how close this person can get to you.
yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't make any difference.
I know it doesn't feel good sometimes. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I have mixed feelings about it because I get some pretty angry feelings about some things sometimes too. But it's interesting, and it's part of what we do as Americans. Let's talk about it, right? Let's have this conversation. One of the thing I came away was that we as humans, we constantly evolve, right? 100 years ago, we weren't as advanced as humans, right? As we are now. And so as we develop our laws, as we develop a tolerance, if you will, for thought and freedom, we are going to continue to have to grapple with these things. But I think we're moving in the right direction, even though sometimes it's really hard and it doesn't feel good. Yeah.
The unfortunate thing that I find is that if you have a political point of view that differs from someone else's political point of view, we seem to have come to a place where it's very difficult to have a conversation, because whether it's you or the other person, you get polarized or stuck in your perspective, and you really don't have a conversation, or you
Right.
just avoid a conversation. And I find that has gotten a lot more prevalent.
Yeah.
I mean, even in my own experience with certain family members, you just cannot talk about anything about politics because you can't have a conversation.
Right.
It's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And the other question I was going to ask you is, we were in Germany several years ago, and we took a river cruise, and we stopped in Nuremberg, and we saw the Nuremberg Center, and it
Yep.
was quite eye-opening to see that. But in regards to the European Union, I don't remember whether we actually had the court for the European Union involved, or was that European Union court founded or out there after was it a result of those trials? Because that was kind of an international trial. There were people from.
It was, from World War II, yeah. Yeah, I can't remember how it all came about. I mean, there's the International Court of Justice, and then there's the European, so that's like the International Human Rights Court. And then there's an actual European Union, like a court where, if Germany sues Italy, for example, that case goes there to the European Union Court. The International Court of Justice deals with, people who have been, who have committed atrocities, right, who have violated international law, as opposed to European Union law. But I'm not sure the specifics about when the courts.
Yeah, and I don't recall seeing that laid out specifically
Mhm.
but it was very interesting.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I also thought very interesting was that we had a young woman who taught school, who was our guide as we were going through. And she was very interesting in talking about how now, and this was a number of years ago, but how they are now teaching about what happened prior to
Mm-hmm.
the war ending, which for many, many years they denied, and they didn't teach it at all, so the young people didn't grow up knowing anything about what happened.
Yep.
And that is in their public school system now, that they're teaching that. So things do come maybe a lot later, but thank God they do,
Yes.
even in Europe.
Yep. Things do change. That's we had a special reception with Justice Kennedy on the first Thursday night, and it's me and him. So, yeah. More proof. Huh. This is not photoshopped. Okay. So it was great. He took pictures with every single student one-on-one, and then took some group pictures. So it was quite an experience. Yeah. I know, I'm not sure how much time we do have, but kind of along those, sorry, someone had you had your hand up earlier.
I point out this week on the news was a senator who's taken off of all committees because of his racial. Was it nationalist? Was it
Yeah.
white nationalist?
Yeah, from Iowa.
Yeah.
Yep.
So some people are government.
Yeah, the people are being held to account, right? Yeah, yep. But there's also a difference between someone being prosecuted, right, criminally, for something someone says, or someone being held to account through their job, right, or something else that they do, right? So in the United States, businesses, right, educational institutions are not going to have less tolerance for some of the bigotry than you would if, the police would, right? Criminally, prosecutorially, you have to have more tolerance for those things as opposed to like someone, their job. This was our whole class with, if I can pull it up here. There we go.
The lady in pink stands up.
Yeah, that's his wife. Yeah, that's his wife. Sorry, it's a little blurry, but that's his wife. And these were a couple of the professors here. So I'm right in the back there.
The other teacher?
Yeah, there were a couple of professors in here somewhere. Yeah.
You said you had a woman teacher.
Yeah, Professor Douglas Scott. Where is she? Is she in this picture? No, I don't believe she is. I don't believe she is. No. Interestingly enough, just small world stuff. This is Mary Beth her name is Moynihan, and she's the dean of the law school. She's originally from Dover, New Hampshire. Yeah. And I grew up in Rochester and Dover, and so yeah, small world. Yeah, it's very small, very small.
Do you plan to go into international law?
I would love to do some of that work. Yeah, international human rights work, some international economic development work. I really like that. I like working with different people. I like learning about different cultures and experiences and the way other folks do things. And so I'm certainly interested in that. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm trying to get to. So I spent 3 weeks in. Are you laughing at all my food pictures? Oh, here we go. I got to tell you about this real quick, though.
This nice cake there looks
Gelato. Gelato. I finally found coffee gelato. Coffee's my favorite. And then here's a picture of me walking down the street, and I took hold on. It's not good, is it? I love food. This is carbonara. Oh, it's really good. Yeah, this is me and see my cone? Yeah. I had to take a picture of it. It's like high definition.
Years ago, I went to France.
Yeah.
She was in high school, and almost every day she texted me a picture
Of her gelato?
of a gelato.
Totally.
In front of her.
Yeah.
Various kinds.
It is
stacked
really
up.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was sad to learn that someone told me it's worse than ice cream, though.
Oh.
Which I was like, don't tell me these things. Don't tell me these
It's
things.
European, it's gotta be good for it.
Right? Yeah, I don't know. Something like that. I said, too bad.
Doesn't look like you're suffering.
No, definitely not. This was, I want to show you a few more things. This was when you spend time in a place, you find these little corners of cities that are amazing. This little hill across the river. This is looking across to the old city. This is the cathedral that you saw the other view on. This is me, obviously. And it was just this amazing view here of the old city. The colors on the buildings were beautiful. It was just I spent an hour up there just sitting and watching. It was awesome. And I took a bike ride one day down 10 miles south of the city to a little village called McLean, which was just this adorable little village, just awesome. And I biked down some country roads, and it was great.
Water is such an interesting.
It was. There was this river that I took a picture of, and it was crystal clear. I'll have to show it to you here. This was biking down. This was like almost getting right to the Alps. So this is a road. You can see the mountains right here, and it was really just quite stunning. And
What was the weather like when you were there?
oh, it was gorgeous. It was 80, and then it dropped back into the 60s, and so there's no air conditioning there, which was great. Not great that there's not air conditioning. Great that it wasn't, so humid, And
Is the place nice and clean?
yeah, it was quite remarkably clean. Yeah. This was the little village called McLean, and it just makes you want to sit down and have a coffee. I mean, it's like and just watch people. Just beautiful. Just
The old port, which is
It looks very clean.
it was very clean. Yeah, they're out every day cleaning. So I was there for 3 weeks in Salzburg, and then I also took a side trip to Hallstatt. Anyone heard of Hallstatt before? It's this little village. It is literally a fairy tale village. You have to take 2 trains to get there. I've been there once before, and I had to go back. So you take the train there, take 2 trains there. Then you have to take a boat across a lake to get there because there's no road. So you come upon it, and here we go. Here's a picture from across the lake. The pictures just don't do it justice. It's literally this fairy tale place. You can, once it loads here, you can see the lake here. This is the village right here. The church steeple right here I'll show you, but the mountains just go right up, and it's just situated in this most remarkable place. Sorry it's a little slow. I love showing pictures of these places. These are a little bit better pictures. And okay, let me show these to you. This was looking from one of the sides of the villages, and you can see the mountains, and this is a little village. This beautiful, beautiful church steeple here, and then you can actually take a funicular up to the top of the mountain that literally overlooks the village. So this is me, about 1,000 feet up, And it was just beautiful. And I have a picture of like looking straight. This is not, but it is very pretty. I have a picture looking straight down at the village. I think that was me hiking a little bit. There's the steeple. Yeah, so this is like, see it? It's like right here. I'm like, looking right down. Yeah. And this is actually, so here's the train station. And you take the boat across right here.
Wow.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Did you stay there overnight?
No, I should have though. But I just went for the day and I went by myself. So, and then, so I was there for 3 weeks and had a great time. One of my friends from law school who was studying in England actually flew down to Salzburg and met me for the weekend, which was really fun. And then Kyle came over to join me in the middle of the 3rd week. And this is, he flew into Zurich too. He took the train to Salzburg. Train broke down in the middle of the mountain. He's texting me and he's like, our engine just shut down. I was like, I hope you've got 2 of them. So he arrives at the train station. I'm like, oh, this is true, because on the front of the train, there was a second engine. So they had like got another engine to pull him over the mountain. Yeah. So this is me picking the package up at the train station. Yeah. He was exhausted. But yeah, so then we went to, and you just tell me to be quiet if I'm running over, okay? Then we went
When we
to,
get bored, we'll leave.
okay, great. I take cues.
You're so enthusiastic, it keeps us.
Oh, great. Well, I just love travel. It's just amazing. And so this is when he got here, and I'll pull up some of the colors better on here. This is Mirabelle Gardens, another view during the day, and this is where the kids are running through with the sound of music, and it's just really just beautiful gardens. And yeah. What is that?
Mouse with a-
Oh, no.
Okay.
This is the one of the cathedrals. I tried to take this kind of cool picture of the dome, and a very square picture of the top of the dome. Did that work?
The work that goes into creating those.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are like 500 or 600 years old, and they're amazing.
What's the oldest one you've ever been to?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I've been to some in England, which are pretty old. Yeah. Have you been to many cathedrals?
No,
No.
but I read about them.
Yeah, they're amazing. And so we were there. I still haven't left Salzburg, have I? And then we went to Vienna. We traveled to Vienna, so we were there for 2 more weeks. And then from Vienna, we went to Krakow, Poland, which was highly recommend Krakow. It is an amazing city and an incredibly beautiful city. And we probably had some of the best food on that trip in Krakow. We found this Israeli restaurant, which was absolutely just to die for. It was so good. We had amazing food. And it's in their old Jewish quarter. So in Krakow, during World War II, there was a ghetto in Krakow, and the 25,000 Jews who lived in the Jewish quarter were rounded up and moved a half mile to the ghetto. And the old Jewish quarter still remains, and it is so beautiful. Cobblestone streets, the buildings, I mean, really beautiful.
Live there?
What was that?
People live there?
Some people do. Yep. But the ghetto in Krakow still exists. There is a square, a memorial. I believe it's this big park. I think there were 68 chairs in this park for the 68,000 people in Krakow who were murdered. And it's within the confines of the old ghetto. So there are about 3 or 4 different places around Krakow where you can still see the original ghetto wall. And you just go up and touch it, and you just take a moment. And yeah, it's gut-wrenching. So we were in Krakow. I'm trying to get up there. They have this main square, which is just incredible. And so from Krakow, when we were in Krakow, we did something I've always wanted to. We went to Auschwitz, which was one of the most moving experiences I have ever taken a part of. And by the way, when we were in Vienna, we actually took a day trip over to Bratislava, Slovakia. It's only an hour train ride from Vienna. And Bratislava is an old communist city. It looks very Russian, but there are also some pretty modern elements to it as well. Great city, great food, really, really beautiful. This was funny. They have this. They have these little statues all around the city, and come on, they're called the whimsical statues. I'm not sure if you can see them. You can see the little silver. Yeah. So me, and I'm being a dork and holding out my hat. But they're called the whimsical statues. This is the main square in Bratislava, and there's this beautiful entryway and coffee shops and beautiful buildings and lovely, lovely old town there. I highly recommend Bratislava. It's really, really up and coming. Quite a popular place for a lot of people to visit. So I'm gonna get to Krakow and then Auschwitz. It was. The weather was great. There's still Vienna.
Did you take a train there?
Oh, we took a train everywhere. Yeah. Yep. I love taking the train. It's so great. Oh, when we were in Krakow, I'm sure you all have seen Schindler's List. Mm-hmm. I didn't know this, but Schindler's factory is in Krakow. So you can actually go to Schindler's factory, and we did a tour of the factory, which was like, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. This is literally his factory. This is where he put the Jewish folks to work and save them. And it's a museum now, and it was really remarkable going inside. This is, so I'm not sure if you can see it very well. This is what it used to look like. This is literally the factory back during World War II. They have all kinds of really neat old pictures. This is a picture inside. He who saves one life saves the entire world. How many worlds did Oskar Schindler save? If it weren't for him, there would not be me, and there would not be my family either, nor our descendants, my daughter and my 2 grandchildren, my brother Rizzio's 2 sons, my cousin Oleg's children, the children and grandchildren of the others saved by Schindler. So how many saved he really then when he saved 1,200 people? They are countless. And these are people who worked in the factory who visited Schindler's grave. Yeah. Yep. It was something. Yep. And it says, this is the plaque outside, whoever saves one life saves the world entire. It was amazing. This is a picture of the ghetto in Krakow. If it pulls up. And then I'll show.
The wall you spoke of?
Yeah. So I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but yeah. So this is the original ghetto wall. This is one. You can see there's a building here now. This is the portion of it, and there's a plaque here that talks this original ghetto wall in Krakow. So let me just go up to Auschwitz real quick, and then I can continue or stop. You just tell me what to do. Oops. So Auschwitz is very close to Krakow. It's about an hour and a half from Krakow. You can take a bus or you can take a train. It's easier to take the bus. So let me stop. I'll show you this picture. This is Krakow's main square, and then I'll jump right over to Auschwitz. This beautiful cathedral. It almost looks like North African, almost, the style, which is kind of striking to me. Like Moroccan, but it's just beautiful. It's just awesome. So we arrived at Auschwitz. I learned so many things about Auschwitz. Auschwitz is not one place. It's 3 different camps. No, Dachau is different. Dachau is just outside of Munich. Auschwitz it's just literally 3 camps. So they call it Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II, and Birkenau. So we arrived here. This is the iconic Gate of Death. This is what you've all probably seen when you picture Auschwitz. So this is the largest camp. So you actually arrive at Auschwitz I, which is where all of the let me actually take you the inverse. Is this okay? Is this too much? No? Okay. I just don't want to bore you guys.
If we can't get there, this is the next best.
Okay. I just, and I post all this stuff on Facebook because I really believe that, I'm tired of talking about politics on Facebook, so I prefer to talk about things that are educational or meaningful, and sharing experiences from these things. So what was interesting about Auschwitz was I walked in and I was like, do I take pictures? Do we take pictures? One of the first things the tour guide says is the camp's philosophy is that this story needs to be told. So take pictures respectfully, and please post. Please talk about your experience. This story should not be silenced. We need to share the story and talk about what happened here, because if we don't talk about it, it's going to happen again. So this was in one of the buildings. This was just one. They have thousands and thousands of pictures. It was all so disgustingly documented. This is the name of the gentleman. He was 24, I believe. He was killed on June 4th, 1941. His crime was being gay. And he was 24. Like, they were younger. They were 18-year-olds. And you can see his pink triangle. He was gay. There were others who had the Star of David, thank you. They were Jewish. There were others who, had a gypsy symbol, right? But these just lined the wall. Thousands of people. And the Germans, the Nazis, documented all these people. They took pictures of them. They documented their date of death. They documented why they were killed. And just so profound. This is me. This is the at the principal camp. I'll talk more about that in a second. But this is when we first entered. The light was not good, but this is that iconic "Work will set you free." I can't pronounce it in German, but this is where that gate was, and these are all the barracks. So like on one level here, right? They fit like 1,000 people. I mean, it's just absolutely disgusting. This was over at Auschwitz II. This was the gas chamber that when the Russians, because the Russians were the ones that liberated Auschwitz, and when they liberated them in January of 1945, the Germans, in an attempt to cover up everything that they had done, blew up the gas chamber. And this is what it looked like in 1945 when it blew up. They blew it up when they retreated. This was, when you go from the barracks at Auschwitz I over to Birkenau, Auschwitz II, you go from where they held the people to a bigger place where they held people, and then they gassed them. Auschwitz I was, I think, 10 or 20,000 people that they held there. Wasn't big enough. So they built a bigger facility that could hold 100,000 people at one time. This is an example of one of the barracks that they held people in. And the gate of death here. And so I'm not sure if you can see, but off to the right, so we actually went in the tower. So you come in the gate of death, the trains came in. These are the original train tracks here. And off to the right, you'll see all these little things sticking up. Those are the single chimney for each of the barracks. So when the Russians liberated Auschwitz in January 1945, they needed wood to burn to keep warm. The Russians did. So they took down the barracks after they liberated the people who were at the camp. They took down the barracks and burnt the wood for warmth. But all these chimneys are the original, and they stretch forever. They stretch forever. They're the original chimneys to these barracks. And it's one of the most just striking sights. This is the iconic gate of death right here. There's a picture that sits right here. And it's just, the juxtaposition is just so striking. Not sure if you can see. This is the gate of death in this picture from 1944, right here. Train just arrived. All these people, they're being sorted. Some are going to work. Some are going right to the gas chamber. And this picture was right over here. Like, these human beings stood right here. 10 minutes before they died. These are the train tracks that are right here. It's just, sometimes there just aren't words for it. This was one of the train cars. You know, they would fit 200-300 people in there, like cattle, and it just sits there as a reminder. It's the gate of death. It's hard not to take several pictures of that. This was the gas chamber, part of the gas chamber that the Germans blew up. This is a better picture of those chimneys. You see the train tracks, the barbed wire, and just chimney after chimney here. And the foundations are still there. They rebuilt some of the barracks to give you an idea of what they look like. But these are just there. They stretch forever, you can see. There are three, so I wrote everything. Germans destroyed 300 barracks when they retreated. Only the chimneys survived. They stretch forever. These are the original tracks, like I said. Oh, so if you look out back here, the trains came in, the gate of death is behind you. The trains came in here, they dropped the prisoners off here. The camps are over here. The gas chambers that I showed you, you walk up, this is where people are walking out back towards these trees. That's where the gas chambers were, out back there. That's the gate of death close up. This was the barracks at Birkenau, Auschwitz II. And they would, you know, thousands of people were just in here. This was their warmth. This was the heater in here.
That's not reconstructed, right? That's
This I believe was reconstructed. This particular, at least the beds were. I know that. This might be the original. I can't recall from what our tour guide said. This was where was this? Oh, these are the reconstructed ones. They reconstructed, like, it looks like 10 or 15 just in the first. This is just the first row of, you know, like 15 that go back. And these are the guard shacks right here. And this is the crematorium. This was at Auschwitz I, our original stop, the smaller place. So they would literally, the gas chambers over here, sealed them off, brought the bodies over, and cremated them. And you can see how they just stuck them in, and this is the gas chamber. So what they did was, they brought everyone in, and you probably know the story. They told them, you know, we're gonna clean up, take a shower, get naked. And then what they did was they closed it off. There's a little hole up here. I think Kyle took a picture of it, I didn't. They dropped a container of Zyklone B, which is just essentially poison gas. Dropped it in and it exploded, and then, you know, a couple minutes later they were all dead. So this is the barracks at Auschwitz I. These brick buildings and the wires, and these are all original. These are not reconstructed. And we got to go in many of them and just see what they look like. Just walking down the path at Auschwitz I. This was the Wall of Death. This is, to the right here is the prison, the prison in the camp, right? When the prisoners had their trial, they were taken out here and they were shot against this wall right here. Thousands of people died right in this spot.
What do they consider prisoners as opposed to?
People who had misbehaved, and people who had stolen a candy bar to eat, who had peed themselves, or you know, had gone to the bathroom in their clothes. You know, just totally, absolutely absurd, like unspeakable. So this is another view here. These were the purses of people and suitcases of people who came in. This is just one small picture of thousands. These are shoes. This might not look like a big window. It's massive. I could have taken like 3 or 4 of these and lined these pictures up. And this probably goes back 20 feet. And this is taller than me. This pile of shoes is taller than me. These are crutches and legs of people who came into the camp. These are the canisters of Zyklone B, of the poison gas that they use, that they just dropped right in. It says canisters which contain Zyklone B, a pesticide used for killing victims in the gas chambers. And these were goods like cups and bowls that people brought with them. Another view of the... Auschwitz was the largest Nazi German concentration camp from 40 to 45. 1.3 million people came to Auschwitz, 1.1 million Jews, 150,000 Poles, 23,000 Gypsies, 15,000 Soviets, and 25,000 prisoners from other ethnic groups. 1.1 of these 1.3 million people died at Auschwitz. 90% of the victims were Jewish. The SS murdered the majority of them in the gas chambers. And this is just another picture here, the gate. This is probably one of my favorite things that I saw there. You know, those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And it's something that we should always remember. That I often wondered in elementary school why we have to learn history. There's a reason. There's a reason. So those are the pictures from Auschwitz, and it was. Has anyone been to Auschwitz? No.
I've been to the museum in Washington.
In Washington, the Holocaust Museum. Yeah. I've been there too, and you know, there is just so little that compares to actually being there and seeing those things. It's quite remarkable and moving. I said there were 3 camps. There was a third camp a little bit farther away that they started to build, which was going to be even bigger than Auschwitz II Birkenau, this one. And it has been since destroyed, and there's just a memorial that marks the spot now. But there were originally 3 camps within this couple-mile radius. This particular one is about a mile away from the original one. I know the pictures kind of went back and forth, but these 2 camps are about a mile away, but all considered Auschwitz or Auschwitz-Birkenau.
How many acres were they used for?
Oh gosh, it was so enormous. It was so enormous, yeah. I don't know how many acres. Yeah, it was quite large. So, yeah.
It's shocking, this was in most of our lifetimes.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
wasn't, ancient history. This is not ancient history.
It's not.
Scary.
It is, it's really scary.
I
Yeah,
was alive when this was happening.
I know.
I mean, a child.
And these things,
And I didn't know it.
Yeah.
Children in cages.
It is. It does happen on a smaller scale. These things are still happening, and so, like I said, you know, it's really important to be, mindful of history.
What I remember is the rationing and that kind of thing that affected families here.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's. I just finished reading this book by Madeleine Albright, and she's a former Secretary of State under Bill Clinton, as you probably know. The book is called Fascism, and it's called Fascism: A Warning. And she chronicles her history. She's originally from the Czech Republic. She's from Prague. And she emigrated after the Holocaust to the United States. And as many people do in America, they come from other places and they become remarkable leaders. And she tells this story about fascist dictators like Mussolini and Hitler and Stalin, and why those things happened, and how they can continue to happen. And I certainly don't want to get political, but when we think about Putin, right, and some of these other things that are going on, it's the little steps that if we don't say no, they're going to take a second step and a third step, and we can't let that happen. And that's why history is so important, that we remember these things and we don't take our freedoms for granted. And then we always treat people with kindness and respect, and we don't allow others to start picking on other groups, because that's when things get out of control and you have people who start to do these things, and you have someone like Hitler who starts to ingratiate himself with so many others, and they think that he's doing wonderful and marvelous things, and it's the fault of the Jews, or it's it's the fault of the Mexicans or it's the fault of Muslims, right? No, it's not. Let's check ourselves and let's be really careful about how we talk about other human beings, you know. So it was a remarkable trip, and yeah, I'm happy to chat more, but thanks for listening. Yeah. By the way, I also want to put in a plug for